Alrighty, so here we are, the third and final Atkins bar. This one's actually the one I was referring to the other day on the last two, actually, I think, where it doesn't have the sugar alcohols. This one is supposedly 4 net grams of carb. So let's see, where are they coming from? We have total carbohydrates of 15 minus 8 grams for dietary fiber, 1 gram of sugar, 3 grams of glycerin. So that's 4. That would be 12 out of the 15. So where are the other 3 coming from? Protein, soy, whey, milk protein, polydextrose. So that's probably where some of it's coming from. So it does look like it has a little bit of that polydextrose, glycerin, cocoa powder, walnut, gelatin, inulin, tapioca starch maybe, soluble corn fiber, cellulose powder, cream, sucralose. So I'm kind of curious to see how this one differentiates itself from the others. But even again, if we go back over this, the 4 net carbs per bar are, you have to take into consideration what your daily carbohydrate intake is supposed to be. And mine is supposed to be in like 32 or something. So let's see if I can pull this off and have a look. Get those wrappers out of the way. Try to keep them around for the information on them. Okay, so my daily carbohydrate intake should be 30 grams or less. I've heard some people quote like a specific number for carbohydrate intake at 15, no matter who you are. I ran my calculations through a calculator that's supposed to calculate what works for keto for you. And based off of my caloric needs and intake, I've been suggested to take 30 grams of carbs or less, which honestly isn't that hard for me. I don't eat a lot of carbohydrates. So I haven't even gotten anywhere near my 30 grams ceiling. The thing I'm having the hardest time doing is getting the fat quantities. I can get the fat up there, but it's well, I shouldn't say getting the fat is harder. I would say getting the fat without getting a parallel portion of protein is the hard part for me. Because I don't use a lot of cooking fat. I don't use tablespoons of nut butters and cooking oil or any of that stuff, and so that's taking me a little while to get used to. I have been using, like the butter to cook my eggs in the morning. I do use ground beef sometimes. I've been doing ham, which is actually a leaner cut of meat, and so I need to switch back over to using ground beef. I need to do fish, but this one here is one of the Atkins bars, one of these, and its statistics state total fat is 8 grams, protein is 13 grams. So it is more of a protein bar than a fat bar, but it happens. Like the keto bars that I did earlier, I think they're about 50-50. They're almost equal amounts. So, I mean, you're going to have to get your fats from things like cooking oil and butter. And like that's one of the few sources of fats, like butter, cooking oil, lard. That's really like the big areas you're going to get fats in your diet that are not also including protein into the mix. Most of your meats are going to have more protein than they're, well, it depends how fatty a Like I do ground beef and try to get a higher fat content in my ground beef. So I think that does pretty well for some of that, but I'm curious to see how these taste because these are the ones that don't have the alcohol sugars in them. Or yeah, the sugar alcohols. They do strike me as, now that I'm intensely curious about. It looks very much like a Rice Krispie. So that might be where, I mean, this one has a higher level of the Atkins net carbs to it, but it also doesn't have the maltitol in it, which the others had. Okay, a little weird. The crispy portion of it, the first bite into it, it has a slightly different texture to it. Then it becomes more reminiscent of a Rice Krispie. And then the tail end of it has a little bit of a difference to it. And I think that the biggest part of that difference is it's less like a Rice Krispie. It's not a light crispy. It's sort of like a, I don't want to say stale. It's a little bit more like a cookie crumb than a Rice Krispie. It's just, I think it's because they're probably a bit more protein and a fair bit more fat involved in them than a Rice Krispie would normally have, which is weird because Rice Krispies are cooked and dried rice thrown into oil, fried till they pop, pulled out and drained. It's very granola bar. And honestly, if I could figure out how they get that texture on there, that's actually pretty good. And it tastes sweet. So if you were going for a non-sweet flavored one, I bet you could make something like this if you could figure out how they make that crunchy piece. But like, I can see making a flavor of this that's not flavored like a, this tastes like a, this reminds me a bit of doing a tray of brownies and that crunchy bit around the edges where it baked harder on the sides of the pan. That's what this reminds me of. So if you were going for a less sweet and slightly more savory flavor, I think you could probably do this. I mean, if you want to do a sweet one, I would say, swap out their sucralose and their polydextrose for a stevia or something. Although the polydextrose probably gives it some of that stickiness, and the glycerin gives it some of the softness to it. I wonder without the glycerin, I mean, I don't know why you would need to leave the glycerin out. It's not a substantial contributor to carbohydrate or blood sugar response. So you could use the glycerin. The polydextrose gives a sweetness and a stickiness to it. So that might change some of that. The sucralose you could probably swap out for something like a stevia. I don't think a cellulose should add any actual carbohydrate to it. We got corn fiber, cellulose, powder, cream, soy lecithin. The other one I'd pay attention to is it says less than 2% of tapioca starch. You've got sunflower oil, inulin, gelatin, walnut, cocoa powder, vegetable glycerin. That's probably fine. Polydextrose, palm kernel and palm oil, whey protein, milk protein isolate, whey protein concentrate, soy protein isolate, and protein. That's all in the protein blend. So it's protein, polydextrose, oil, glycerin, cocoa powder, some nuts, some gelatin, oil, inulin, and then it's like less than 2% of tapioca starch, corn fiber, soluble corn fiber, natural flavors. I hate when they put that on a package. It doesn't tell us anything about what's in there. So it contains soy, milk, walnuts, made in a factory that also uses eggs, peanuts, wheat, and other tree nuts. Yeah, I mean, at this point, if you're eating anything Atkins or low carb or keto, you're eating a lot of nuts and you're probably getting a lot of dairy, and I don't know that you'd be doing a lot with soy necessarily, but you're probably eating a lot of eggs. So, I mean, I think this is actually a decent contribution to doing something with a keto diet. Like I said, it's 1 bar is 4 net grams of carbohydrates, and this one, unlike the other ones that say like 2 net grams, those oftentimes had something like a maltitol, which glycemic index on those has suggested that the maltitol does raise glycemic reactions to the same degree as like 50 to 75% as much as table sugar. So whether it actually instigates the same response, I'm not sure of, and you'd have to test your own blood sugar in response to those kinds of things, your ketones and your blood sugar and those types of things. Because to me, if it's a substance that's known to cause you digestive stress, like gas and diarrhea, which is an unfortunate thing to have to talk about, but maltitol is one of those things that can instigate some of that. And that happens when those things are fermented in your large intestine. And if they're making it to your large intestine, that suggests it's not being absorbed by your small intestine, which suggests to me that there's a lower percentage of chance that it's actually making an impactable effect on your blood. Now, once it's fermented in the lower intestine, does some of that then absorb and become blood sugar activating or an insulin activating compound? I don't know. And I think what I said yesterday is also something I have to keep in mind. Those are actually pretty good. I can see snacking on those. They do have a higher net carb than the other two do. But like I said, that's 4 net carbs on 1 bar. I get a total daily intake allowable to remain in keto, bare minimum 15 or less. According to my calculations, I should be able to get it 30 or less. But I've heard some people say, like, just aim for 15 or less. So if I just considered that what I was aiming for, I could eat 2.5 and still be on the good side. But that's the other thing I want to say. Like, and I think I said it each night I've done these Atkins bars is, and I mean it about the slim fast things that I ate earlier in the week too, is like, you shouldn't be gauging like, well, I can get away with, these because they're not going to, impact my blood sugar any. Like, you're still reinforcing bad eating habits. You have a bad relationship with how you eat food. This isn't food. This is flavor. This is sort of what I said last night. We have a tendency to eat flavors, not food. There are ways to eat healthier foods, but we crave the flavor of things. Like, I think the example I gave last night, or maybe it was the night before, where I said, like, you could have a bowl. You could have a bowl of salad this big around right in front of you. And you could eat, it'd be salad with some salad dressing, so some good fats, some vinegar, maybe some lemon in it. You put some nuts or seeds on top of it, potentially some cheese and some egg, sliced egg, and you eat that. You could get, a little bit into it like this, and just it'll fill your stomach, and you'll get to the point where if you just keep eating that huge bowl of salad, you're not going to get a third of the way in before you're just feeling like there's no room left in my stomach. But you'll still feel like you're unsatisfied. And that's because you're craving something. Because I guarantee you that salad's going to have more vitamins, more minerals. It's going to have, if you do the dressing right, it's going to have the healthy fats that your body needs. You're going to have things like fiber from nuts and vegetables. You're going to have, you might be short on caloric intake with something like that. Depending on how much dressing you put on there and how much caloric weight that adds to your portion that you eat. But overall, what you're looking at in those scenarios is you're getting everything your body needs, but the fact that you still want something more, like you're full to the point of discomfort, that's not hunger, that's a craving. And these things, I went for a long time with my chronic health condition. I went 8 years unable to eat most foods. And so after 8 years of not being able to eat some of those foods, I actually went in for a procedure in the hospital where they recommend you flush your system out. And I went, well, they want me to use their terrible tasting liquid to do that. But I already know that eating regular food makes me violently ill, so it'll flush the system out too. So I'm going to get all the foods I haven't had in 8 years. And I sat down and I found out, like, I hadn't been having cravings for them. And when I ate them, I realized they don't taste good. They're not good food. And you need to get yourself distanced from candy bars and snack bars like that, not find a way to substitute a keto version of them to get around the cravings for them that you have. Go for some vegetables. Learn, like, a plate of vegetables and a side of beef. That's a good meal. You don't need anything else. And once you get used to doing that, you're probably not going to feel the craving for it either. I think some of it's craving. Some of it's also social pressure. Like, it feels weird to be on the outside and not be able to eat. Like, if you're going on a hike with friends and somebody pulls out a granola bar and you've been having granola bars for years with them going on a hike, you want, just like a smoker wants a cigarette after years of smoking. I worked with people in a kitchen. And it was a university kitchen, so you'd get some of the summer off. And those people that got the summer off, they don't smoke in the time of the year where they're not working in the kitchen. But as soon as they're back in the kitchen, it's you get that 15 or that 5-minute, 15-minute smoke break a couple times a night. you go hang out with some of the other workers in the kitchen, and you go out and you smoke a cigarette, and like it's the habit and the people you're with, and like you don't even have to like smoking. Like it gets to you enough that being the odd one out and skipping out on that aspect of your environment leads you to crave things. Like there's something missing if I'm not doing this. And I feel like that's what we're doing with a lot of our foods. And so if you're vegan, and it works for you, that works for you, fine. But I feel like to a certain degree, if you're going to go vegan, why are you making these vegan meat substitutes? Find a way to make a good vegan meal that doesn't require you to fake something that you're not eating anymore. And I feel the same way about like these snack bars and these candies. Like, find a way to eat keto, find a way to eat low carb, find a way to eat, just find a way to be comfortable with the fact that you acknowledge that this is a problem that was causing some of your whatever you're trying to solve by going keto. For me, I don't have to lose weight. I don't have to watch my blood sugar. I'm just exploring how my body responds to a higher fat intake versus the previous diet I did, which was a higher carbohydrate intake. I hated that one. I hated that with a passion. And I realized, very early on that carbohydrates weren't the flavor that I was craving. They're the filler. They're the vehicle that carries the flavor of the other things. So why would I add it? Like if I was craving a bowl of spaghetti, I wasn't craving the noodles to most of the degree. There is an aspect of carbohydrate that keeps you coming back for it. But I wasn't craving the flavor of the noodles, the sauce, the meat in the sauce. Those were things I was craving. And those are things I can do without the noodles. I could put spaghetti sauce over shredded cabbage and it would be fine. Steam some cabbage and use those as noodles instead. Like I could do squash and cucumber. I could do a bunch of things instead of doing pasta. And the thing that I was craving, the taste that I liked about spaghetti, could be on anything. So the pasta wasn't necessary. And it wasn't bringing anything extra special to the plate. And in the process of doing that diet, I discovered how much it disrupted my sleep and how much it made me ADD and unable to focus or run simple calculations in my head. Like, oh, I'm really understanding how I don't do well on high carbohydrate intake. That's just useful information for me to have. And this is just a means of me exploring a higher fat diet, low carb, high fat, medium protein. That's what I'm doing right now. And I'm not sure I'm noticing anything yet. We'll discuss that a little bit later in the month where I do the health and well-being at the end of the month, discussing the diet and starting a new exercise routine at the end of the month. But the taste tests on these, I mean, they're all right. Like they're doing a good job of approximating. Well, most of them are doing a good job of approximating food that isn't a restrictive or denial of a food. Now the slim fast keto stuff, like the fat bombs, like I like the chocolate they use on that, and I like the nuts in the chocolate. It's neat to see the caramel be able to, give some stretch and some stickiness to it. But that caramel is really hard. So I'm not a huge fan of that caramel. Now these Slim Fast bars, these are the ones most of all. It's the salted caramel and macadamia nut. These most of all I did not particularly care for as much. It's okay as a treat. I think the thing that catches my attention most about them, these are a optimal low carb ketogenic nutrition. What do they call it? Salted caramel macadamia nut meal replacement bar. There we go. That's what it says on the box. It barely says it there. It's a meal replacement bar. And those I didn't much care for. Like, they had a very greasy taste to them. It's sort of like somebody mixed in entirely too much oil into that for my taste. And they were pretty dense, but they also had way more of they had like a multivitamin ground up and put inside of them. Yeah, I mean, overall, my habit of eating changed drastically, but I'd like to take credit for it, but I can't really. I changed the way I ate because my body gave me excruciating pain when I ate outside of the way I ate for 8 years. That's a lot of the word ate in there. But for 8 years, my body rebelled every time I tried to consume even the slightest, like if I ate a peanut, if I ate a piece of corn, just like a kernel of corn, if I ate 3 grains of rice, if I had a bit of, if you used water that was used to cook pasta to steam my vegetables, I would probably have an issue later in that day. I do remember working in the kitchen. I got a free meal, and so I'd get some vegetables and bring them over to the stir fry location. And oftentimes, when making a stir fry, they'll fry up the vegetables in a pan with some oil, and then they put a ladle of broth onto it, like a vegetable broth. And I always made sure to tell the person at the station not to put the broth on it. And on 1 or 2 occasions, I think the woman who did my stir fries for me was so used to doing the meals for somebody else that it was too late. Like when I noticed that she was starting that ladle onto the dish, I'm like, no, 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 it's right there on the dish. So I had broth introduced, and broth is usually thickened or has some starches or stuff added to it. That's a carbohydrate, and my body just didn't break them down well. So it was always like, well, here's my meal for the day, and I'm going to have a bad afternoon. I'm probably going to get sick a couple times in the next hour, and then I'm going to have a bad day tomorrow. And so I would love to take the credit for avoiding and being very stringent about how I managed my diet for 8 years. The truth is, I did it out of absolutely terrified fear, because I knew, like, you ruin 2 days of excruciating pain, violent illness, and the inability to get any food to stay in you long enough to make you feel like you haven't been starving for 2 days. Like, that's the consequence of a slight slip up. And for me, it just never was worth, oh, that brownie pudding out there on the table looks amazing. Like, it doesn't look amazing enough for me to lose 2 days of my life in pain and suffering. It's just not worth it. And so it became a really easy, it's not worth it. And I found quickly that I could get enjoyment from the smell of foods without having to eat it. And I was perfectly content eating peas, carrots, and chicken breast every meal, every day for months on end. I got to a point where I could do a salad with some dressing on it. That was variety. And then I started figuring out how to do stir fries with cucumber, zucchini, yellow squash, carrots, peas. I think I even did some things like mung bean sprouts. I had to be very careful with things like broccoli because they are harder to digest. And if you already have a volatile and struggling system, you don't want to add that in there. Um, I'm trying to remember some of the things I used to add to my stir fries too. But it was an unflavored stir fry. It didn't need any flavoring. And like when you get to the point where you've got your vegetables and your meat that you can do, I did shrimp for a while. Shrimp, salmon, chicken, use some coconut oil, and you could do, I mean, at this point, I would probably do something like peppers, cucumbers. I would love to try carrots again, but I think I developed a sensitivity to them. And peas were nice. I don't think I handle those well anymore. I could probably do broccoli now. You just throw in a few vegetables into a pan with some meat, cook it up, and that should be good enough. Maybe a little bit of salt on it, but you shouldn't feel like you need to add a sauce to everything. And that's another thing where I come to, you know, things like this in the taste test is I'm not eating this kind of thing when I'm not eating keto-based snack foods that you can buy. This is just because I hit a taste test week and I'm like, well, what am I going to taste test? Or food-based week, what am I going to do for a food-based week? Well, since I'm in the midst of my first week of trying out keto, might as well see what's available in the stores for keto. I do think you could do better versions of these. And I talk about, like, with something like this, you could add stevia as the sweetener. But, and I've said with like the last 2 or 3, I think, specifically, that like you could make these yourself, maybe cheaper, maybe not, with different sweeteners. But my feeling, I feel like I've been defending maltitol the last 2 days, or sucralose, or stevia, as ways to add things to your food that are not carbohydrates but that are okay. I don't really believe that your diet needs to be sweetened with anything. Like, it's just like you don't need it. You just have learned to crave it. And I think if your goal is to eat healthier and benefit your health and your fitness level, using the old things that you had to get away from because they weren't good for you is a step backwards. Find a way to fall in love with vegetables. Find a way to love the meats and the eggs and the dairy. Find a way to fall in love with those flavors and find those as comfort foods. And I realize that's a tall order for a lot of people. Not everybody has an excruciatingly painful experience every time they eat off their diet to help guide them. And I realize using just your will alone to choose your foods and try to make the choices wisely can be really hard to confront alone. I think that's the other aspect of the social eating patterns that we have, where like so many people, like it's a bagel at breakfast, or toast and jam at breakfast, or oatmeal at breakfast, or those types of things, that if you're eating with anybody else, unless you're all doing the same food choices, it feels like you're sacrificing, and it shouldn't feel that way. We should see those, like we should see vegetables, we should see meats, we should see the occasional piece of fruit, we should see salads, we should see herbs and spices and cooking oils as real food, and these as like they're fake. They're not, and it's not just like I'm not saying that's a fake bar. I'm saying that's not food. Food feeds you. Food nourishes you. And like, if you know that eating a candy bar is bad for you, you shouldn't look for a way to make the candy bar less bad for you. You should look for a way to find other foods to enjoy that aren't bad foods. I think that's really the overarching argument I would make on the topic of some of this. And so, like, these artificial sweeteners, like, I have noticed that eating these bars over the last few days, as much as they are not a carb, they're not a heavy carbohydrate. They're a low net carb intake for the amount that I'm eating in a day. I have noticed that where I would normally eat 2 eggs for breakfast, maybe something like tuna fish for lunch, maybe do some ham and cheese for lunch instead, and I would do something on the lines of meat and beans for dinner with a side salad or something. Like I can eat that way and not have any hunger or cravings all day long. If I eat pasta, or if I eat oatmeals, or I eat crackers, or if I put my tuna on bread, I find that my body sort of craves things faster. And then the next day, if I don't eat any of those things, my body's upset, like I haven't gotten enough. Like 2 eggs, 4 slices of ham, a salad with some cheese and some meat on it with some dressing, ground beef with beans and maybe some spinach and maybe some vegetables mixed into the beans. Like, that's enough for me almost every day that I eat it. You add 2 slices of bread to that, and it won't be enough for me the next day that I eat that. And I'm noticing, as much as these are low net carb foods, I'm noticing now, after being most of the way through the week now, of having at least one of these a day, that I'll eat one of these with my eggs and my ham, and 2 hours later, I'm looking in the fridge again for, like, doing a little more ham with cheese on it? Like, I feel like I need something more. And I'm not hungry. I can tell you, with the amount of fat that I'm eating and how heavy that sits in my stomach, I don't feel a sense of hunger. But I do think that's making me want something more. And I do think that's something that's interesting to pay attention to as I go further in. When I'm done with this week and I'm not doing any more of the bars and stuff, and I can go a cleaner keto for me, and I'll discuss some of that, I think, probably on Saturday night. Going forward, I would say, I would wager you, once I get into a cleaner keto where I'm not substituting these things that make me crave other things, that I'm not going to have that issue, that I'm not going to have the urge to go look in the fridge for something more. I could probably get by with 4 eggs and a cup of ground beef, probably a salad, and some vegetables. And that would be more than enough for a day. Like, if I did 2 cups of vegetables, or in the case of salad, probably like 4 cups of vegetables, a cup of ground beef, 4 eggs, and some dressing, that would probably be more than enough for me to feel satisfied during the day. Now, the other thing I'm doing for this round of the next 3 weeks, the rest of this week and the rest of the following 3 weeks, I'm sticking to what I did for the carb thing, which is a daily caloric intake of 2,000 calories. Now, 2 eggs some ground beef and a salad, or 4 eggs, ground beef, and a salad with some dressing on it in the middle of the day, that's probably going to top out at about 1,000 to 1,200 calories in a day. So I'm going to need to add more to my consumption in a day. But I will feel satisfied with what I'm getting. I feel like when I eat these, I'm more prone to wanting to snack. And that's not a good thing. And it's another reason maybe not to eat as many of these kinds of things. But it's something like, I feel like if you are starting out looking to go into keto or looking to go into a low carb meal pattern, these are not a bad way to wean yourself off of things. If you eat 2 granola bars between your 3 meals a day, if you eat like breakfast and then have a granola bar in the morning, and then you have lunch, and then you have a granola bar, and then you have dinner, and maybe like a cookie or something after dinner, if you do one of these bars after lunch as a way to get you towards eating better, then yeah, use them. But let's not fool ourselves into thinking like that's food. That's it's a crutch. It's something you're left holding on to. And it can decrease the struggle while you figure out what tastes good enough for you to enjoy that's keto or low carb friendly. Because I think that's the thing that you really have to focus on is, can you find a way to find comfort foods that are on the eating style that you benefit most from? I don't know if that's as clear as I want it to be, but the idea of, there are a lot of keto foods, there are a lot of low carb foods that you can eat. And there's one out there that you're going to love. And when you find it, to have that be your comfort food is something you should see as a goal, a challenge to succeed at. Because when you find that food and it's your comfort food, but it's still within the eating style that's beneficial to your health and well-being, you should seek that out. But until you find that, so that the diet you're doing on your regular daily while you're exploring and finding out the things that work for you, so that you don't feel like you're sacrificing and making yourself miserable on this diet, which just makes it so much easier to get off of it and just give up. These can be a way to get you there comfortably. And these are actually pretty tasty. There's a mild aftertaste to some of them. This one, I think there is a little bit of something. I would almost wager you it's the cellulose powder. Either that or the soluble corn fiber. There is a little bit of a, like, you don't notice it when you eat it. I'm noticing it now because I'm breathing through my mouth and there's still bits in there that I can kind of taste it. It's a little bit sawdusty, but you don't notice it when you're eating it. It's just something afterwards. And I think that's the reason I had a little bit of trouble with the Slim Fast Keto bar, is it tastes like a multivitamin has been snuck into your candy bar. And it has. It's a meal replacement bar. It's a multivitamin in a candy bar. And so you can tell. And it doesn't take anywhere near as long as, the slight cellulose flavor left over on this takes several minutes for me to notice. This, it's after it's out of your mouth and in your stomach that you have this slightly, I don't want to call it sandy because it's not a texture, it's not a gritty, but it's sort of like if you were to mix fine clay into a glass of water and just get a little bit of it, you're going to have that slightly mineral aftertaste. It's sort of what that keto bar tasted like afterwards. I was like, it's not bad, but I wouldn't seek it out very often. These, I'll probably finish the box over the next few days, just to get rid of them. I mean, I paid money for them. I'm gonna finish them. And the thing I also like about the Atkins stuff is it's decidedly cheaper than the Slim Fast ones. This was, I think, $6, $5 or $6. It's $6, almost $7 maybe. Two of the bars that I got for Atkins were $5.90 something, and one of them was $6.40 something. And that's much better than the $10 that the Slim Fast ones were. $9.97 for the Slim Fast. All the Slim Fast stuff, the shakes, the bars, the fat bombs, the all of that stuff is $10. And this is half price, same number of bars. I kind of think this is a better deal because each one of these bars is roughly about $1 in cost. That's much more handle. It's much easier to handle on a budget. And frankly, the Slim Fast Keto ones didn't taste quite as good. If you're looking for a tasty thing, I'll take that back. The Slim Fast Keto Fat Bomb Caramel Nut Clusters, the chocolate and the nuts on those babies is the best chocolate of everything I've had so far. All week. But the caramel is a little bit of a drawback on that one for me. And they cost $10 for 17 individual clusters. And 2 clusters is about the caloric take of one of these bars. So you're getting 7. So 7, you're getting a little bit more than $1 per portion on that. These are $1 or less per portion. So, I mean, I kind of feel like these are a better deal. Definitely better than the meal replacement bar. I'll say that. The meal replacement bar was $10 for 5. Same number as these. It's nearly double the price. I think this is a better deal. And honestly, I would favor this one over the Moose bar is super, super decadently sticky. So I would say that's something you get a box of 5 of. And you have one every 2 weeks to 2.5 weeks, maybe even once a month. That should be more than enough for eating those. It's a candy bar. It is a full-on, you're not under any illusions that it has anything other than a candy value for you. So that's totally workable. The coconut ones are actually pretty decent. I would rank those as, I'm trying to think. The coconut ones, I would almost say I like them better than an Almond Joy or a Mounds. Because an Almond Joy or a Mounds is very, very sickly sweet to me. And maybe that's just because I spent 8 years without any sugar or carbohydrates. So lots of things with sugar in them seem really sweet to me now. So I like the coconut bars better than like an Almond Joy or a Mounds. And I'd say these are pretty tasty as far as I think they equate to more like a Quaker's Chewy or a Kudos bar. These are a triple chocolate though, so they're a little bit better than some of those. I kind of like the nuts in it too. It's very much like having a brownie, like a crispy, it's a cross between one of those. It's like a cross between a Rice Krispie treat and the crust on a brownie. That's where I would place this, and it does have the 4 net carbs per bar, but I still feel like that's not a huge risk factor. Although I can't tell, I wouldn't recommend these every day. Again, this is probably like a once in a while treat. I would try not to do them very regularly, and I would totally recommend you do testing on yourself to see how your body reacts to them, because different people are going to react differently to what's in these. If these do cause a spike for you in blood sugar, you may be killing any keto effect that you get. But I think the odds of that are pretty slim. Like, you're talking about 4 net carbs in a single bar. That's probably not enough to be a worry. But I don't know enough about how your body, or in my case, my body, because I don't feel the need to track it personally for me. But it's entirely possible that, like, if I were to get these 4 to 15 net carbs a day split up across 5 meals, 5 meals, 15 carbs, so you're getting 3 carbs at every meal, 3 net carbs. I don't know if that distribution of those net carbs in a day is less likely to kick you out of keto, whereas eating them all in one sitting, like if I were to eat this whole box of these bars, 5 bars, 4 net carbs, you're getting 20 carbs. Did I do my math right? I think I did that right. Yeah, 20 net carbs. If I got that all in one sitting, is that enough of a spike to reverse the keto? But honestly, and here's the thing I want to say all week long that I've been careful not to say, but I'm going to say it now anyway. If your diet is so fragile that you can eat a bar or 2 bars to throw you out of whatever effective path your diet is on, your diet is too fragile to be a functional way of sustainably living. You can't sustainably live years. Well, I did, but you can't sustainably live for years on a diet that's so fragile you could slip up accidentally and totally derail yourself for a day or more. Like, that's an unhealthy relationship with food. That's a paranoid. It's a mirror of what a lot of young anorexics go through, where they look at calories as the enemy. If you look at net carbs as the enemy, and like you see yourself, oh no, I got 7 at this meal, I'm in trouble. If that's how fragile this is, it's not healthy. It's not a healthy relationship to food. And I think that's my biggest worry about some of the weird, and it's why I hesitate to jump in on keto eating or any of these fad diets out there. I'm sure somebody's going to recommend I try a vegan diet for 4 weeks, and I'll probably do that at some point. I'll explore that. I have no problems doing that. But again, I'm not doing it because I need to lose weight. I'm not doing it because I want to make some gains in the gym. I'm not doing it because I have blood sugar issues. I'm not doing it because I'm trying to fix my heart health. There are ways to do that aren't unhealthy ways of looking at food. I think the biggest problem we all face right now is, as a society, the standard of eating is unhealthy. We are not eating smart or healthy as a culture. And we've gotten so used to it, and we grew up eating that way. So that's pattern we're used to. And so trying to vary from that, I get why we resort to things like this sometimes, but I don't want anybody thinking that you can just switch over to these instead of your regular candy bar after every meal. Like, that's not a healthy choice either. Like you're just exchanging one bad relationship with food for another. Um, anyway, wow, I really did ramble tonight. I'm debating whether or not, well, I should be able to do tomorrow nights, and I might be able to do Saturday nights. Tomorrow's is not going to be any more of these bars. I think I'm done with these bars. I'm not going to go pay $10 for a new flavor of the Slim Fast ones either. I think tomorrow I have lined up a chip. And then I think probably what I'm going to do on Saturday is keto foods that aren't prepackaged made foods. So things you can do yourself. Oh, well, I mean, I might do something like like a peanut butter, and like I might make some egg salad and tuna fish and a few of those kinds of things. Like they're all easy enough to make home versions that have no maltitol or stevia or sucralose added to them. They're good sources of fats. They're what I'm going to end up using to get my fat intake up. And they're actually fairly healthy ways to approach keto. So I think that's what probably Saturday is going to be. Because I don't want to buy those shakes. I know I hate those shakes. Those shakes are terrible. I'm not going to have those shakes, and I don't want to do any more bars. We've pretty much tried the bars I thought were worth doing it. I did see Atkins did have some M&Ms and peanut M&Ms. I might think about getting some of those for Saturday, but I don't think I don't want to spend. Well, maybe they're Atkins. They're going to be about $4 to $5. It's not bad. I might do that. I'll think about it. I've got a couple days to figure it out. So I think I'm going to call it there for tonight. We're almost at an hour anyway. So thanks for joining me. I hope this is at least moderately interesting to, experience my figuring this stuff out and my rambling diatribes afterwards. But there are some options out there that are okay to start with, and then gradually work your way into just enjoying eating meat and vegetables. It's not a bad way to go through life. Meat and veg are good. You'll lose weight, probably, if you're used to a carbohydrate-heavy diet. You'll probably lose some weight, and it'll help you monitor your blood sugar levels so that they're healthier. I think the only thing I worry about with keto and low-carb eating is while a lot of the foods you will eat, vegetables, salads, meats, they are better for you in that format, you're also getting heavy nutrient density, which is good, unless you got some kidney issues where your body's not able to filter out if you're going to get an overdose of certain things. Only one of the few areas I have to say is very tricky to monitor. I've got a friend who's got some kidney issues and some blood sugar issues, and he would probably benefit from eating keto, except for keto relies a lot on nuts, and nuts are very high on potassium, and potassium is not good for kidney issues. It's something that tends to run high, and if it goes too high, it can cause damage to your heart muscle, and so you got to be careful. You got to watch some of that stuff. That's why I don't usually recommend people decide to do a diet like vegan or keto or any of those types of things without properly going through what they need to do with some people with experience about how the body works and what it needs. Now, I'm not saying every doctor is going to get everything right. I've had doctors give me some weird information. Like I used to have a lot of carrots in my diet, and I had a doctor panic. She goes, "You're getting too much vitamin A." No, I'm getting provitamin A or beta carotene. Those are the things your body can take in and flush out and converts it over to only as much vitamin A as it needs. So not every doctor knows those things. And she was a GI specialist. She was also like, "You're getting too much vitamin C." Vitamin C is water soluble. You'll piss out everything that you don't need. If your kidneys are working and you're getting enough water, you're fine. So, talk to some experts. Don't jump into anything like eating keto or eating low carb or eating anything without at least some kind of somebody to check in with regularly, and maybe doing some of the tests to see how they affect your body. So take a blood sugar monitor, take a keto monitor, take a ketone monitor, take some insulin monitors. If you have issues with kidney level, get tested regularly to see where your potassium levels are and how your kidney functions are going. I forget the name of the compound they check for kidney function. I want to say bumulin, something like that. It's not coming into my brain right now, but it's basically the broken down proteins in your body as they flush through your kidney, and if it builds up too much, it means that your kidneys aren't flushing them well, if I remember that correctly. So there are tests you can do to monitor the health of all your systems. Talk with an expert who can help you monitor those things over a period of time. Do some of the home testing with blood sugar to see how your body reacts to certain foods and items. I think I mentioned once before, I saw a study one time where some people with one type of gut microbiome can eat a bowl full of ice cream and not have a blood sugar spike, but other people eat a bowl full of ice cream and they get a massive spike and then a drop. And that leads to tiredness and hypoglycemia. And so different people react differently. You need to learn what works for your body. And I can't tell you what that'll be. I can't advise you how to eat because I don't want to risk your health based off of what works for me. Because we already know I have a digestive ailment. So already we know my system doesn't work the way yours does. Yours doesn't work the way that everybody else's does. You have to learn. And I really wish there was sort of like a course that they taught in elementary school of how to listen to your body and, how to try foods safely, how to do an elimination diet, how to do certain exercises that burn more calories. Learn how your body reacts to different exercises and different foods and how to listen to your body for those. We need that in education because we're clearly doing it all wrong right now. But anyway, yeah, I need to call it here. We've already hit an hour. I will be back tomorrow with more chit chat. Thanks. Take care and have a good night. All right, so